Oh yeah, let's get this show on the road. How we all doing? Hope everyone is having a nice day. Welcome back for another portfolio review. This beautiful day in May. We're here for some I think we're gonna look at 4 portfolios, I think. Depending on the time. I think the first one that we have up here is gonna be relatively quick, but then I don't know how involved the other ones are gonna be. So let's start with these ones. Adam is in the chat. Hey Adam! Doing good. How about yourself? Yeah, doing good. Show it on my camera. Too close and personal. Oh, I forgot that we had chat on the screen now. I thought it was a bug. Yeah, I've been doing good. I mean, it's been a rough day. In terms of like getting stuff done as well. Like I've been struggling with baking this morning. Like for some reason, like one of my bakes is coming out really weird. And I spent like way too long trying to fix it, and it's not fixed yet. Yeah. And then also, Nacho was pretty sad because it was missing his mom. So that on top of it. But yeah. Other than that, it's been all right. Yeah, the issues that I'm having with the baking, it's kind of weird. Like it only happens on one file, like with one type of with one specific asset, and it's kind of like the normal map is fine, but the ambient occlusion like has like a lot of stepping into it for some reason, even though there's nothing wrong with the mesh that I can tell. I mean, I've done like a whole bunch of investigations into it. Like, basically, I don't know what the hell's happening. So, I got that to look forward to after the stream. I've had the same type of issues. Baking issues, that is. Aw, sorry to hear that, Adam. Sorry to hear that we're in the same trench on that one. It's weird. Like I've tried like a bunch of stuff, and all the usual things don't work. And then I tried like another file completely from scratch with different assets, and it just works fine, flawlessly first time. Just like, the fuck is going on? Hi Nikori, how are you doing? Testing out the pen over here. But yeah, we'll get those resolved. That's part and parcel of being an artist, right? Joe Johnson, welcome back to the stream. How are you doing? Full screen on here. Nice. There seems to be a delay on my chat box. Let me check that out real quick. No delay on it. Okay. Interesting. Vibin' buddy, how's things? Yeah, man, doing good. Doing good. Interesting. Seems to be a delay on the on-screen chat, but it's not there. A normal one. No idea. Yeah. We're just talking about a little baking errors that I've been running into today, which I don't know, don't necessarily get me all excited about doing 3D, you know, but we run into these issues. Anyway, it's time to look in some portfolios, shall we? I'm gonna start with this one from Jack Ibbotson, because Jack actually had a portfolio review last time as well, if I remember correctly. And it did some changes. So this is more gonna be like a portfolio review follow-up kind of thing. Where he mentioned that mine hasn't gotten any new projects since the last feedback session, but I've altered the thumbnails as per the feedback. So very quick. Yeah, so mainly sticking to the thumbnails then, right? I think they've definitely improved, even though it's kind of hard to recall like how they looked before. But they do. This one looks a bit more interesting. I'm still. I mean, this is not a thumbnail issue, right? Oh, this one has improved as well. I think honestly you can push this one a little bit further with like, I don't know, maybe even like zooming in on like the ticket thing itself. It just, there's still something that feels kind of off, you know. And maybe what you could try as well is upping the brightness and the saturation. Or contrast, right? Oh, this is going all the way behind into chat. I need to keep that in mind. Hold up, let me make sure that we don't go into that region. Right, so extra brightness and contrast is definitely going to help here. Like you want to make your thumbnail stand out, right? So that's why I gravitate towards like the whole ticket section, because that's like the most vibrant part of this little asset, right? So I think you can definitely push this one further. On this one, the first one that we kind of had a look at, I'm not a big fan of like stuff that lines up with the frame all too much, right? So it basically makes the whole thumbnail feel like really static. But like, yeah, I think it's more interesting to have something like this, right? Where you're kind of looking at the 4/3 or like 3 1/4 view or something like that, right? Where you get to see more of it. A bit more perspective into it instead of just like almost flat. And that's what I would say on this one. Just a little bit, right? Because I think last time it was a little bit overcompensated, where you were too low to the ground. I think the middle ground would be nice. And then this one, looking good in terms of thumbnail. Yeah, it was a quick one. I think definitely more perspective in this thumbnail is definitely going to help a lot. And then focusing on like the really bright contrasty areas on this one to make that your thumbnail, that's also gonna help a lot, right? You don't have to follow the exact framing that I did, but you can do something interesting, right? Something that just pulls in the attention. Awesome. That was like a quick recap. This was basically like a portfolio review follow-up that we're doing here. So let's move on to the next one then. Oop. Hi Gameplays. Hi Karav. How are you both doing? All right, so got a couple of screenshots here. Like 4 different pieces. I do want to start out first with how you represent yourself, right? Like what your kind of title is, like your self-given title. That's this little tagline over here, right? Very simple thing that we can do here. Just remove the graduate. The reason why I say so is you never really want to shoot yourself short when it comes to the studio that's going to be looking at your work, right? What you want to be doing there is you want them to make up their mind about your skill set and if it then applies to the studio itself. So by you calling yourself a graduate, you're basically setting the bar lower than they actually might see your work being at, right? I hope that makes sense. So basically comes down to don't lower the bar for yourself. Right? Because if they are looking for graduates or if they are looking for juniors, like they're just gonna look at your work, right? And let them be the judge of your work and then see if you fit that position. So yeah, don't do it yourself. That would be my recommendation. Yeah, overall it's good. I love the banner. Definitely your latest piece, Matt, is definitely came out nice. So it's very good choice to show that off, especially with like the full environment around it as well. Pretty good choice. How do it, Alberto? How's it going? Yeah, so once we got the title out of the way and like the banner kind of section, right? Let's move into like the area below, which is gonna be the work itself. I'm gonna scroll a little bit up for you guys. So we have 4 pieces here. Got some interesting shots. It's yeah, I mean, let's just have a look at them one by one, right? And I'll kind of say what I think about them just as we go along. I feel if we start with number 1 over here, then it is nice, right? You have like a detail shot of your object. The only thing that is kind of annoying to me, and I don't know if anyone else in the chat feels the same way, is that the asset is cut off on the side. So it would probably be better to like move the whole thing up towards the side a little bit, and that you can almost see, like, what is it? Like you almost want like the asset to take up this space without cutting itself off, right? I think that could be like a better approach than here. Because it just feels really weird where you have like this part of the asset just cut off. So yeah, I would definitely move the asset just up to the right. That way you get to see like the entire silhouette of it as well. Plus, you probably also benefit from having like the most detail-rich section of your asset still being in view, right? Because we're still gonna see this entire area anyway. So yeah, that would be my choice. Then moving on to number 2 over here. I think this one is actually really good. You know, I like the focus here. I like the angle as well. Yeah, don't really have that much to say on this one. I think maybe if we're being really nitpicky, like playing around with the contrast and how light it is, right? Lightness. That you can make it pop even more than it currently does. And also maybe applying like a little bit of a vignette on it as well. A slight one. But honestly, these things are more suggestions than actual things to do. Maybe the vignette is more of a thing that would be good to apply because it's just like such a nice tool to draw the focus in. But the contrast and lightness is more up to what you want to do and how you want to represent your work, right? So I don't mind it that much. Move on to number 3 then. Yeah, this is an interesting one because I like how you picked like a focus, but I don't know. Like I think it could be nice in this one to zoom a little bit more out and give people like more to look at in this case. Maybe even like give more depth in the scene, right? Because now we're just focusing on this one building. I don't know. Like, it's not bad, right? Probably have more issues with putting it to words than anything else here. I don't know. Maybe the angle isn't that interesting. Oh, that building has a nice silhouette. Maybe a symmetrical thumbnail from the front. Yeah. Yeah, that could be an interesting one to try out. So that you just have like these things like in as like a frontal shot. Could be an interesting one. Yeah, could be interesting. It's worth trying. Sometimes it's hard to put things into words, right? Because I feel that there's something better you can do, but I can't really put my finger on it. So yeah, this probably warrants like a little bit more experimentation. And then we got the fourth one, which obviously there's a little bit of bias in here, right? But I think from all the shots that I've seen, I think it's a good choice to go with the overview shot on this one. Because it has the most atmosphere, the most contrast, and like the more, like the most color contrast specifically, right? So it makes it stand out just by itself. So I think this is actually like a pretty good choice. Awesome! Yeah, so that's like a quick overview on like the thumbnails, right? Let's dive into some actual work here, shall we? And like how to present your artwork, and like maybe we can see if we can level that up here as well. I'm just gonna start with the latest one. We're gonna start out with this wrench, which I've actually kind of already seen. It was kind of cheating in a way, but I mean, I've seen most of this stuff, but I think we discussed more intensely in our community when we were in voice chat. I actually like the pretty clean presentation, right? I think this is actually a good approach of showing your different maps. The only risk that you might get into is if someone scrolls down and you see that, like, they wait just long enough that they don't realize that it's a GIF. Might be tricky, right? But there's no other way to do it, right? Like, if you make it too quick, then people can't see the actual information. If you make it too long, then people don't realize that it's a GIF. So I think the balance here is actually quite well done. And I think once it gets going, I like the pacing that it has. So yeah, I think this is like a pretty clean representation of what you could do. Well, I mean in your case, Matt, like it's what you are doing. Yeah, great choice on this. Very clean. And I think this is good, right? I think what we're seeing here is that the prop kind of speaks for itself, and then the breakdown is only supplementary to it, right? But like the prop does most of like the talking, right? Like, I mean, look at it. It looks really good, you know? Like that's what you want, right? Like a nice amount of pictures here in as well. And then just like a little breakdown. Nice and clean. I love this. I love this style of presentation, Matt. Great job. Really clean. Yeah, just really nicely done, Matt. Don't really have too much to say on this one, so let's go ahead on the next one. This one was also really well done. I like the presentation of the broken screen. You know, it kinda has that realistic feel to it. I love it. Oh, let's actually go back, Cairo. That's actually a good point. So, I feel like the side-by-side shots cropped could be a nice thumbnail. Get that nice pop of blue as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's interesting, right? Because normally my go-to advice is to say like, hey, focus on the smaller thing, right? So that it becomes like a teaser to what the actual thing is actually like. But I do love the thing that you said there where you have that nice pop of blue color. It kind of puts it on your radar, right? So you can definitely use that. Maybe something like this, right? If you then angle them in the same way that the thumbnail is already at, maybe that could be like an interesting crop right here. Just something like that, right? But then with like the two objects like side by side, maybe at an angle, something like that. Yeah, it's always awkward with these long props. I definitely get it. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I love that suggestion just purely for like the pop of color, right? Because a lot of it is gray on white kind of thing, and then if you push the blue a little bit more, it could actually be like a nice touch. Then also sneaky, like be very sneaky with pushing the saturation up a little bit more in the thumbnail so that it pops out a little bit more. But obviously, gotta be careful with that. You don't want it to pop too much, and then people are like, oh, it's way too desaturated now in the final post. Yeah, that's some interesting advice there from Cairo. Thank you for that. And then we were kind of looking at this one here, right? Cool. Okay, so this is like a more extensive breakdown then, right? Oh, interesting. All the keys separate. This is cool though. I like this little breakdown, you know? Did I go to the end? Yeah. It's kind of doing the same as you're doing before, right? I think here, like, the breakdown is probably like a little bit too long. I mean, not too long necessarily, but I think you're showing off. Yeah, you can basically condense these 4 posts that you have here, right? Where LOD 0, LOD 1, LOD 2. Like, you can basically condense that into, like, this overview that you have here currently. And then the only thing that's missing here is just have the wireframe on top of it, right? Yeah, because this is very valuable, right? Because I like that you're showing that you're reducing the keyboard, which makes sense, right? And then also reducing, this is an important one actually, like also reducing the material sets as well. That's a very interesting one, and I love that you did that. Yeah. So I think you can just condense the stuff. Like condense especially the LOD posts just down into like one thing. Also, another thing to bring up is I see that you learned a lot in your last prop on how to present your assets. And to to present just more than just a raw asset by itself. I think take those lessons and maybe like quickly reapply them to this prop to elevate the presentation could also be like a really good choice. And with that I mean just add like a little floor underneath it, right? Floor with mega scans or something like that. And that can ground the whole prop, and then maybe you'll add something next to it, or I don't know what you want to do with it, right? But just doing a little bit more like you already did with the other prop would be good in my opinion. Yeah, this is cool to show off as well. I like that you did that. Yeah, you can see the keyboard disappearing a little bit, but honestly, that's a completely negligible, because what most people look at when it comes to LODs is the silhouette of things, right? And the keyboard is not affecting the silhouette, so you're totally fine. The only thing that you might have to watch out for is... it's negligible. I'm not even going to mention it. It's all good. Like, the LOD transition looks really nice. And I love that you presented it, right? Because not a lot of people do. So it's nice that you're keeping that in mind. And I think that stuff is going to give you a leg up compared to other people, right? Because to me, it doesn't only show that you can do LODs, like execute them, but also that you're very detail driven and that you're not only thinking about making it look nice, but also thinking about the optimization part of it too. So that's a great thing to include here, Matt. Yeah, so I'll do like a quick recap for each one, right? So number one would be to like improve the presentation. Well, not the presentation per se, because that sounds like a way bigger thing. So presentation with floor, right? Like the floor thing that we talked about. And then condense the amount of posts that you have about the LODs and the transition of it. That could be very helpful as well. I think honestly the rest of it I would just keep the same, because you did a very good job at presenting it. So great job, buddy. Nice one. Awesome. This is from 7 months ago. I think we actually already talked about this one. Yeah, I think what you're doing here is nice, right? Where you have the separation between materials and prompts. However, I don't think you need like one full page image for like every material. I think you can easily just do like a collection of them, right? Just having like 4 side by side, and then maybe with like a blurred background behind it with the environment or something like that, you know, just to fill up the black space. Yeah, I would definitely do something like that, but the rest of it looks really clean. Like the main shots that you picked. Yeah, and we already talked about this one before, so nice one. And then, yeah, we definitely talked about this one, right? I mean, this is all well and good. Yeah, I think the same thing here, right? With like these materials, there's no need to have them like stacked underneath each other when they can just literally take up like one space, and it probably reads better. Because as soon, I mean, there's no set standard, right? Like how many images you need there's no given guideline what is good and what is bad. It's more like the amount of images that you need to show the thing off in like a very condensed way. Because what it basically comes down to is you don't want to waste people's time as they're looking at your portfolio, right? Because it's not only about managing their time, but managing their time also translates into potentially getting you a job quicker, because it shows that you know what is important to show off and what is not, right? And that's gonna be very important for getting you a job. So yeah, really being very critical of your own work and picking the best shots and only the best, and then putting those like on your portfolio is very key. Like you could say that you could optimize some of these, right? Like maybe this shot not that important compared to the other more impressive ones, right? So might be something to consider, just to condense it down. And then do the same thing with the collage of materials here, which look really nice, by the way. Yeah, so that would be my 2 cents. So let's go on up to the main overview again, and let's do like a quick recap. So what did we say here? Number 1 here was a thumbnail, right? The thumbnail could definitely use some work. Caro came up with a great suggestion of maybe using the 2 of them side by side so you get that nice pop of blue color. Be very interesting. I think that's the main thing on this one, right? So moving over to this, we had the floor, which could definitely make an impact. Number 2 is condensing the breakdown. Right, especially like the LOD part of things, like you can easily condense that down into like just one or 2 images. I would say 1. Then we're moving on to this guy over here. That's also going to be condensing the breakdown. It's probably going to apply to these 2, right? Especially when it comes to the materials of it. And then for this one, thumbnail can definitely be improved a little bit. Yeah, but that's mostly it. Honestly, like the way, especially your last 2 props, right? The way that you present your work is really, really good already, Matt. So you can see that in the feedback as well, right? Like the feedback is more like how to structure your presentations and how to present your portfolio in like a more condensed and concise way. However, like the way that you present your work and like the attention to detail and like the time that you're putting in like really shows in your work. So great stuff all around, and that's why the feedback is more focused on the actual structure of the portfolio rather than the actual artistic side of things. Yeah, to me that's a very good sign, Matt. So that's awesome. We got a question in the chat as well from Tobias. Hi, quick question. Is prop artist an actual job title? I enjoy making lots of everyday items into 3D models for games, but I don't know if I'm just wasting my time. Yes. I mean, it was part of my prop title. I was an environment/prop artist, even though in my case, I wasn't really spending too much time on props, but prop artists are definitely a thing. For sure. So yeah, definitely not wasting your time. But the worlds are only gonna get bigger, so we'll need more and more props. Hi Andrea! Hi Salon! How are you both doing? And welcome to the chat. Cool. Thank you so much for posting your work, Matt. That's really appreciated, man. And I know you're looking for a job, so good luck. And if anyone wants to hire, like, I mean, this is the perfect guy, you know? Look at the work. Nice one. Awesome. So we got Jack done. We got Matthew is also done. And I think so those two people were from our community, right? So like these were from our private community. And now we're gonna jump into the public ones. Like these are people that send in their portfolio over the last couple of weeks or months. Like honestly, I've been pretty bad at this. I'll just say so straight away. The whole idea of like doing people from the community and then also combining that with people that are here in the chat right now, that whole thing, it's not really set in stone, and I've kind of missed the mark on it. But hey, trying to improve, that's why we're here, right? Anyway, long story short, let's look at some portfolios that were shared before. So I'm gonna apply the same kind of routine as I do in like all the portfolios, or like kind of, right? So let's have a look at the title. 3D generalist. I find this one really rough, right? Because I know that there are 3D generalists out there. However, I think it's always good to be more specialized and really showcase what you want to do. Right? Because at a certain point, you're going to have to choose, right? So that's the first thing that I want to bring up. Like think about a specialization that really stands out to you and try to chase that and then bring it out on your portfolio. I'll give you a quick summary why. Caveat first. Let's start there. I take all that I'm saying from a big AAA perspective, right? So you got to kind of see it through that lens while I'm talking about it, because it might be different if you're working for like a small indie studio that requires you to wear more hats than in your stereotypical AAA like big development, right? So take that into account while I'm gonna say this. The thing that I was gonna say is recruiters are looking at your portfolio and they kind of want to see if you're good enough to fill a specific role that they're looking for, right? So usually those roles are very specific, and the more specific you get with your work, usually that translates into it looking better, because that's what you specialize in, so you're more comfortable with doing that specific subject. Whereas if you just do like all of it, there's a saying, a jack of all trades is a master of none, right? Like if you want to do everything, then it's gonna take you way longer to build up like that same skill level that like a person would have when they specialize, because you're doing it on like way more levels, right? So you gotta keep that in mind into the whole equation. This is also not to say that if this is really your thing, right? If you just want to make everything, and if that is your dream, and you can't stand the thought of having to specialize, it might be your way of doing things, right? But then you also have to be honest with that you're already, what's the best way of saying it? That you're already setting yourself up to not get into certain parts of the industry just because of that fact, right? Because the industry will always like require you to specialize in some way, shape, or form. That whole ramble out of there. I'll let the work kind of speak for itself, right? I'm gonna use this as an example of how generic I think you should get to the max and what your work is kind of comparing to, right? So the bottom part here is more 2D stuff, which is fine. I've done 2D before this as well. Like, I wasn't really trying to become a concept artist, but so yeah, we got some 2D stuff, we got some character stuff, we got some hand painted or like more stylized stuff, got some realistic, got weapons, like you got everything, right? And then characters again, or like, well, a skull, not a full character. But it makes it really hard for, well, basically what it boils down to is a recruiter or like a team of people that are looking at your work is going to look at this and they're going to be like, uh-oh, this person doesn't know what they want to focus on yet, so we're just going to move on. Right? That's what's going to happen, realistically. Unless they're specifically looking for a generalist, which then, I'm trying to think, is probably not going to be really game related. Right? So, that all keeping in mind. Let's have a look at the actual stuff on display, right? Because I know that I just said like all this stuff, but I actually think that your work looks kind of good. Well, not kind of, like it looks good, right? I'm interested to explore like some of these pieces. When it comes to the thumbnails, because you got such a wide array, that gives me like the flexibility a little bit, right? So I like this one. Don't like this one. This one is cool. This one is not. This one is also not. Oh wait, let me... What do we say? I'm just gonna take like the top 2 rows, right? So... This one's cool, this one's cool, this one's... can be improved. Like, it's not a yes or no thing, right? I'll explain it a bit. Really... Kinda cool. Alright, let's see if we can find some common ground in these thumbnails then, right? So, this one is clean. Clean and well lit, right? Like, the focus is on, like, the interesting areas of the prop. You can, like, I'm excited about, like, all the roughness variation that's going on in the axe handle, and also the detail that's been put on the handle itself, right? So this is what excites me. And, like, it kind of looks like really realistic. Like, it looks nicely presented, right? Same thing here. The focus is on like really interesting bits of the prop, right? And then you use depth of field to kind of fade out like this, which is like a nice little bit of presentation. Then if we go over to this one on the left here, it's not really hitting the mark in the same way. You know what I mean? Like, the lighting is pretty flat. I know that it's just a sculpt, but you kind of still have to drive the presentation to the next level, even on like just a sculpt, right? Because this feels like, it almost feels like a little bit lazy, where you're just doing like a ZBrush like capture or something like that, right? With like just a standard gray background. And I think you can present it in like such a nice way if you really wanted to. Like, because the skull itself looks really nice, actually. The same is kind of happening here. Like, the presentation is kind of done like in a lazy way, but not in a good lazy way, right? Like, it has a gray background, and like this thing feels like really noisy as well when it comes to the roughness and how it reads. It's also very, very difficult to distinguish it from the background as well, which usually means that there's no rim light behind it, right? Like, you use a rim light kind of coming from the back of the asset so that it highlights like all the edges of the asset. So it would like highlight like this edge and the edges up here, separating it from the background. Whereas now the values of the main prop are disappearing into the background, making it very hard to read. And you don't really have that here, right? That's also what makes them like really nice and stand out as like good presented props. Then moving on to the next one. I think actually the interesting thing here is that the prop is nicely silhouetted from the background. However, it's not well lit from the front this time. That usually means that there's no key light or like the fill light is missing, right? Because you do have a light there. You can see it in reflection. It's just not intense enough compared to the environment that it's in. Right, and I'm gonna quickly rattle on some stuff like this. This cutoff doesn't feel good where you have like the prop on the left and the prop on the right is just cut off. Like it feels just like, oh, let me take a quick screenshot from like front and then okay, good to go. Look at this, right? It's kind of the same treatment in those two things, but just having it all in frame and having it slightly like slightly angled is already making it look so much more professional than this one does. And it's super simple stuff, right? Like you just have to rotate your asset in like a different way and maybe increase the light a bit as well, because you can see that one feels brighter than the other one. And then you can kind of start applying like those little rules that we just said across all of these ones, right? I know that I just picked like the top 2 rows, but you can apply that to like all of it, right? And that also brings up like the interesting question of overall consistency. Right? Where this is to me as an artist, I wanna see some sort of consistency. Not necessarily that everything needs to be the same and you can't innovate, right? But I wanna see that if you're presenting props in the same sort of way, then try to tie them together with like a white background, right? Or maybe have bright backgrounds and have that be your thing, instead of just being like, oh, black, white, now gray, now this sort of presentation. It kind of feels all over the place at the moment. And that is saying something about you as an artist and how you present your work as well, right? Because if the work doesn't show consistent, that hints at you not being consistent either. Right? Whether that's true or not kind of has nothing to do with it when you're thinking about like the normal recruitment process, right? When someone's going to look at your portfolio, they don't get to talk to you to understand you further than just the pure visuals that you put on display for them, right? So that's why it's important to have that consistency and to kind of always link it back to showing who you are as an artist. And that's why this consistency thing comes up. Also, another thing that I'll say, a couple of quick hacks. The first one is, I don't know if that's a free thing. Use folders. Right? Folders, basically, they add like a little tab here where you can say like, oh, this is all my work. This is my character work. And this is blah, 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 and so on, right? But it allows you to kind of put it into like neat little folders. And then you can start picking and choosing what you actually want to display first, instead of just having this giant wall of stuff that you just show off. Or pick your focus, pick and cut. Right? So if there's something that you're like, I really like to make props, then go all in on the props and remove all the rest of it. And just cut out the clutter, right? Because again, with the whole specialization thing, right? That's what they're looking for. And if you figure out like, hey, this is my specialization, I don't want to put it in folders, or I can't because it's paywalled. I'm not sure about that, if it's paywalled or not. But if it is, then I would definitely say like pick the stuff that you really like, and I think like and you think represents you the best, and then cut out all the rest. Or well, cutting out means unpublishing. So you can still keep it on your ArtStation, it's just hidden for everyone else, right? So, because I'll explain a little bit why, right? And it's actually very simple. Like if I'm looking at a portfolio like this, like I'll be like, oh cool, there's some interesting stuff, and the more you scroll down, it just becomes very overwhelming, right? You as an artist need to decide what you're gonna show the potential people that are gonna be looking at your portfolio, right? You don't necessarily wanna have them see the whole thing, but just the thing that you think is gonna get you hired, right? Because that's why you have a portfolio. Like if this was your, let's say, your Twitter feed or whatever, right? Then this would have been totally fine. It's just your portfolio should be like the best of the best, and it should showcase what you want to do and what you have to offer potential employers. I hope that wasn't... I don't know if Joseph is here, but yeah. I know it's a lot to take in, and I'm kind of being very, very upfront about all of this. But hopefully it helps. Andrea is asking a question. Oh, hi Alex. How are you doing? Sorry, Andrea. I have a question. What are some of the big no-nos when it comes to portfolios, and how much should you display to show off your skills? How much is too much, and how much is too little? So, that's the question with no answer. Because it depends on how good the stuff is that you're putting on display. Because if it's all top level stuff, then you can add it all to your portfolio. Right? I think if genuinely, like if I go from post to post and I'm just looking in awe the entire time, like then there's not too much that you can add, right? But where it usually breaks down is you have your newest work, which is usually your best work, right? And then you see like a gradual slope, or sometimes even like a quick slope down into like the stuff that's no longer valuable to keep on your portfolio. Right? So, but where that line is, you kind of have to decide that for yourself. I'll add another quick one, like as a little bonus on top of that, right? Don't try to show off your journey. Like, for a potential employer, your journey is not going to help them really make a decision. Because they're not hiring you for who you were like a year or 2 years ago. Right? They don't have that same sentimental value that you attach to your work. Because that's only personal to you, right? So don't look at it as a journey. Your portfolio should only be like your best and most current work that is still relevant to your current job. That's the way that I look at it. I have an interest in environment art and level design, so it makes it difficult to know what needs to be shown. Interesting. So you have an interest in both. Usually they're done by separate people. Again, I'm talking from a AAA perspective, right? So take that into account. Because environment artists are the ones that make it pretty. Level designers are the ones that make it functional. That's like the quick breakdown, right? So I think it would be interesting for you to define first which one of the two that you want to be more, and from that point on you can figure out what needs to be shown and what not. On the environment art side, like this stream is perfect, right? Because that's what we're doing now, and that's what we're getting into. On the level design side, we're talking about like a whole completely different set of parameters that I know some of it, but for the level design portfolio, that's a different thing. Yeah, so where do we go from here? Let's have a look at some of the work here, right? Just gonna pick one. I like what this hatchet is looking like. There's a lot of text going on here, right? What's the metal material I made a while ago and just the mass channels? Okay, there's like this is actually a very good example of show don't tell, where there's a lot of information here behind the chat. Really forgot about the chat again. So there's a lot of information here, right? But actually, that information doesn't really matter if you're not showing it to me in some way, shape, or form, right? If you're trying to get into like the games industry, you need to show off game art. Like if you go back, if you're watching the recording of this, if you go back to Matt's portfolio, like he actually does a really nice breakdown of what actually needs to be shown for your stuff to be relevant to game art. So I would definitely have a look at that. So you did bake the high poly onto the low poly, which means that I would actually want to see the wireframe, right? And then you say custom metal material. For the handle, I used the base wood presets within Substance and added grunge and custom details. For the rendering, I used... Yeah, I would say all this stuff that you're adding here, right? Like just show it. So, the base wooden preset within Substance and adding grunge and custom details on top of it. You could do like a layer by layer breakdown if you wanted it. Right, like as a little GIF. So you're basically rendering out like shots from the same sort of angle from your prop, and you show base wood material, you show the layer on top of it, you show that layer on top of it, and you kind of break it down that way. That could be like very interesting to look at, right? So the GIF material breakdown. And then the logo creation, don't necessarily need to show that off. Let's see. Then export it into ZBrush where I added Wooddale. Yeah, like you got the sculpt as well then, right? Show it. Because these are all things that I'm missing, right? And then texture maps as well. This is like a list that you can kind of use specifically to this piece. Just show us what you're missing here. Right? Because the whole thing about being as transparent as possible is that you can show that you're confident in your technical abilities as well as your artistic abilities. Because if you don't do it, I have questions. Right? I can make like an estimation here, like looking at the shapes and looking at the geometry, that the low poly is probably going to be way too high for what it needs to be. That's what I'm currently thinking. But even if it's not, like there's no real way of knowing until you show it to me, right? So, because that's my gut instinct, that this low poly is way too high poly, or like way too dense for being an actual low poly that can be used in a game. Or is optimized, right? And I just get that by looking at like how smooth the shapes are. Right? And that can give me like an insight in how well you can optimize your games. Right? So show that all off. Put it all on display. The thing there, and this is kind of what the real shade is asking in the chat as well. The thing there is once you start showing it off, it needs to be good as well. And that counts for UV unwraps too, right? So if you have a UV unwrap on your portfolio, which is highly recommendable, I would do that for your props specifically. But then they also need to be good. Right? They need to, the basic thing is don't waste too much space, right? If you're not using like half of your UV space, then something's fundamentally gone wrong there. But yeah, you need to keep in mind the padding and like the spacing, if you straighten out like certain sections or not, where you make your cuts, all that kind of stuff. Like the more transparent you are, the more you open yourself for it's twofold, right? Like for the artist to discuss your work, because they can actually look at like how you technically put it together. But then also they know that you're confident about putting it out there, right? So that might score you extra points as well. So yeah, on that note, this that was it on the hatchet. Let's pick another one. Let's pick the hand grenade here. Yeah. I mean, there's not too much to say, right? Like, no description this time. Yeah, the textures have like a weird mix of like being really fresh when it comes to like the stamped lettering here, and then also being really damaged looking at the cap. Right, so there's a mismatch in textures. What I'll also say is the presentation can definitely be lifted up to the next level, right? This is very stereotypically game art rendered, if that's a way of saying it. Like, it's just flat color background, like some lights on it, and then okay, good to go. I think looking at the quality that people are putting out there, you definitely have to push it to the next level. And usually what I recommend is giving it like a little bit more storytelling, right? Like putting it on the table, or like putting it in like a military crate, or whatever's available on Megascans. You don't even have to make it yourself, right? But you could have like a stack of them like in a crate, and then just rotate them, slightly off-center them, have one maybe without the cap on it or something, where they're putting it together. You know, you can do so much cool stuff rather than just putting it into like the ether, you know, and just having it in like a black hole kind of thing. And that's going to make your work stand out again, right? So that's going to work in your favor. Let's actually have a look here. I think yeah, there's some cool texturing going on. See, this could be a cool one for like a thumbnail, right? I would honestly cut these two out and just have this one, and then maybe that one, right? Because it's showing off like all the nice roughness variation. I think these are like two good competitors. Yeah, but I mean, most of the stuff that we discussed before can already be applied, right? This is a 2D skull. Didn't realize it was 3D, I think. Or maybe it's like a combination, right? Like 2D with an overpaint. Yeah, there's some cool texturing going on. Nicely presented as well. But it's like, it's very, very, I think the main thing here is just the presentation of it, right? Like, it's very, very standard and like very, it's almost, it is lazy, I think. Like, I'm trying to dance around the word, but there's honestly like no better way that I can say it. It's just like, oh, I have this cool looking prop and I just put it on a black background and that's it, you know? You have to go a little bit further than that, right? You need to push it to the next level. Same as you're doing here, right? You do it so well in like other presentation. It doesn't take too long, right? Like, this is literally just like a flat plane with like a light shining upon it, and this looks already like way more interesting than this lantern in terms of presentation. Even though this lantern probably has like way more going for it than the pen here, right? Yeah. Presentation, we tend to skip it, but that's honestly where the magic happens. So yeah, let's do a little recap, right? I know that I've been talking a lot over here. So the recap would be, first of all, specialize. Show me what you're interested in. And if you're going to be good for that position in my fictitious company, right? Like, show me who you are. Oh. Right? And then second one is presentation. Show off what you can do. Right? Showing off what you can do. Like, it's important, right? It's not only about like, because the presentation goes hand in hand with the creation process itself, right? It's a part of it, and it's absolutely firmly embedded in there. So if you skip on the presentation, you're actually doing the work that you've put in before like a disservice by not presenting it in the right way. And I think that's going to be very important here on this portfolio to bring. It's twofold, right? It's consistency and just quality as well. Because I 100% can see that you know what you're doing, right? Because some props actually show it off that you know what you're doing here. You just have to make it a little bit more consistent, and you have to drive that quality in all the work that you do, and then together with that specialization and showing what you can do, that's gonna put you to the next level. Those are the two big ones. Those are I think the two most impactful ones that I'm gonna bring up here, which are definitely worth looking into. And once you got those two figured out, because it's not only about the work that's out there, right? What I'm trying to get at is it's also you as a person. You're entwined with your art, and yeah, you need to show that to other people. Like, you need to show that off to other people, right? Where, yeah, it's a part of your journey. So yeah, I would definitely specialize that and then up the presentation. That's already gonna look like way better than before. Is there a third one that I want to add? I think those two are the big ones in my opinion. because the texturing looks good, you know, like the modeling looks good. I would say maybe if I wanted to bring up like a third one, and let me actually add it more to the side as well, is breakdowns. The reason why I sound so questioning about it is if you want to do game art, right? Because obviously my conversation has been all about game art. If you wanna get into game art, you need to show people that you can do game art, and that means wireframes, UVs, textures, like, yeah, showing all the stuff that we need to see to see that you can do game art, right? Cool. I hope that helped, Joseph. I hope that helped. And yeah, best of luck. And yeah, I don't think you're a part of the community, but send me a message afterwards, right? Like send me a message on ArtStation if you have any more questions or if I can help with anything. I'd love to help out. Cool, we got some questions in the chat as well. Sorry, I just wanted to round off the portfolio first. Let me take a sip and then we're gonna dive into the next one. Let's see. Sulan, I have a question. First time catching you live on stream and following you for 2 weeks. That's awesome. Happy to have you here. Is joining the community the Patreon subscription? Yes, exactly. Yep, that's it. Love to have my portfolio review. Cheers. Yeah, exactly. You can get access to through beyondextend.com, and it has like a link to the Patreon community, and that's how you can get access to our Discord and stuff. Tobias is asking a very good question. What is the quality standard for a junior entry-level job, AAA for models? It's ever-changing, but let me see if I can give you something to hold on to, right? I think the best way that I can say it is that the quality bar is as high as the current marketplace for talent makes it to be. So what that means, if you look through ArtStation and you're looking for juniors or like graduates that are still looking for their first job experience, look at the work that they're producing and kind of average that out. And that's kind of like the quality that has been set, because you don't really want to focus on like the best of the best, because you also don't know if they already have like previous experiences with other 3D forms, right? So you don't want to set like crazy expectations, but I think that's a good way of looking at it. But yeah, like I would love to give you like a 5-point like a list of like, oh, if you wanna get in, this is it. But unfortunately, when it comes to the quality standard, there's nothing like that. I think the second best thing that I can say is make the best art that you can. And I know sounds like a cop out as well, right? But that's honestly what a lot of people do, and they kind of ditch the technicalities a little bit in service for the art. Because if we look at the two things together, the art is always more difficult to achieve than the technical aspects and like the optimization parts of it, right? So you need to kind of see it through that lens. Where I think obviously there's this really weird thing that happens, right? Like once you get into doing 3D, you need to get through all the technical hurdles to get to making good art. But I think once you get to that point and just start making like really good art, or get comfortable making art just by itself, then yeah, just keep pushing for it. Does that make sense, Tobias? Let me know if it doesn't. You know, like Let me know if I can answer any more specific questions. And the Real Shades is asking, I've uploaded the Marmoset viewer on my ArtStation to show the 360 of my models and texture maps. Is this fine, or should I add the texture maps as separate images? That is an interesting one, and I love that you bring it up. It's interesting for two ways. First of all, I've never minded before, right? When I was looking at people's portfolios, I've never really minded looking at the Marmoset viewer before, because it was always this thing of like, okay, now I want to know how it's built, and then I can quickly look through it, right? But I also say this from like a lens of, I didn't have to review a massive amount of portfolios for the positions that we had open. Because when it does become, like, let's say you have 100 applicants, and you have to go through like 100 of them, I can guarantee you that people are going to skip over your Marmoset viewer, because they just have to get like through the other like 95 people. See what I'm saying? Like, it's a tough one. I think it's still good, right? Because I think what that does is kind of like the same thinking that I'm applying to it, right? Like, if they like your art, then they'll take the time to do the deeper digging. So, yeah, long story short, I think it's fine. Let's keep it at that. I think that's totally fine, just having a Marmoset viewer in there. That's an interesting one. I had never really put it into words, you know? Like, didn't really think about it that way. Second favorite, I just joined up. Love the content. Thanks for all the tips and tricks. Oh, that's awesome. Welcome to the community, second favorite. That's amazing. Glad to have you with us. Yeah, but thanks so much for the questions, everyone. Like, feel free to ask any more questions, and I'll get to them whenever I see like a good break, like the portfolio review. I think what we'll do, an hour and 20 minutes. Let's have a look. I'm gonna do Eloy's portfolio for sure. And oh, Alex, that's actually a very good point. Yeah, people also rip models through Marmoset and Sketchfab viewers, something to keep in mind. Yeah, there are people like that, you know. Already rough enough for us to scrounge the money together in some cases. Like, just let us at least have our content that we made. Yeah, but that's definitely a good point to bring up, Alex. Yeah, maybe I'll see if we have more time for two more, maybe. Okay. Sip a drink and then we'll look at Eloy's portfolio as well. Nice, Eloy Cairo. Alright, we're gonna do the same exercise, right? And to see if this format kind of works. First of all, let's have a look at the title. 3D Generalist. This is an interesting one, because I feel that you're saying 3D Generalist, but in my opinion, you're more of a prop artist to me. Or maybe even weapons? Right? If you had like a little bit more weapons on there, you could potentially become like a weapon artist as well. And with weapon, I mean like hard surface type of content, right? Where yeah, very intricate like models like the gun, for example. So that's the first thing I will say. Probably change this to prop artist. Right, because that seems what you're more aligned to based on your work. So I would just like go into it, you know, like just own up to the fact that you love doing props. Because that's exactly what it looks like, right? Even though there's like some environment stuff in there, I think the prop stuff is of higher quality than the environment stuff at this point. Again, I'm just looking at the thumbnails, right? So I might be completely wrong. Talking about the thumbnails, let's have a look at them, shall we? Just say you love props. Exactly. If you love something, then just own up to it, you know? I'll say this. I know that I give a lot of people advice to specialize, right? But if you look at my portfolio, it has always been environment art. And I'm not talking about a specialization within environment art. I like doing all the environment, you know? And I've always kind of stuck to my guns, and I was kind of fortunate enough that a company was very receptive to the stuff that I was putting out there. But yeah, it's kind of the way that I approached it. Anyway, let's have a look at the thumbnails. Don't love the black here. I also don't like the black here, right? I think the vibes that I'm getting from this electro gun are like a little bit more playful, and then the dark background behind it kind of kills that vibe, you know? I think sometimes it's also like very interesting to play with like very playful colors, you know? Like maybe try to break the mold of like what everyone else is doing and just go crazy, you know? Like try stuff. You're an artist. Yeah. Yeah, I think like in terms of like the composition here, I would probably get rid of this small gun here, but it's a fairly stereotypical like rotation and like asset orientation, but I actually don't really mind that much, you know? Like it's not that bad. I think honestly the ones that I like the most, and one of them is obscured by my damn face. Scroll up a little bit. Yeah, I love the hammer here, and I also love the coin because they have like a slight angle to them. Like they make use of like the 3D forms that they have, right? Or like the 3D orientation. Same with the medieval shop. Not too bad. I think with the medieval shop, it will probably be more interesting to focus on detail. Focus on detail within the shop rather than the whole shop itself. Yeah, so I would kind of get rid of that, like make it a brighter color. And I think for the other ones, I'm gonna have a look at the work first, and then see if we can look at the work and then get like good thumbnails out of it. But first, I'm just gonna check out this unpainted hammer. Oh, that's it. I was scrolling. There's nothing here. Apart from the prop itself, of course. Yeah, that's the first thing we'll note down, right? We've been talking so much about it as well. Game art breakdowns. Where are they at? Like the wireframe. Wireframe, textures, etc. Right? Yep. It's yeah, the presentation, I don't know, it's just it doesn't really do anything, right? Like it's not that exciting. Like I'm kind of expecting like a very interesting presentation when it comes to stylized props, because you get more freedom. Right? Like maybe something in the background, maybe something like it's laid on a carpet or something like that, right? Like something like a stylized little carpet that you could like quickly make. Yeah, something, yeah, like improve presentation. Because this is again a case of like, I can see the love put into the prop, right? I can see that. But then you fly through the presentation and you kind of I don't know, I was thinking about a very rude way of saying it. I'm not gonna do that. You kind of basically destroy all the hard work that you put in, right? That's probably a better way of saying it. Because yeah, and it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame. So I would love to see a little bit more detail. Detail and storytelling, right? In the presentation. In storytelling, to me, I said it before, right? Like, it's such a broad topic to me. But just not only sell me on this hammer, but also the hammer and what kind of world it lives in, and who's been using it, and what kind of person is it, and yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, right? Like, it's not only about the hammer, but it's also like, where's the hammer been? You know, like, what kind of adventures has this hammer been on? And like, try to put that out there in like a very visual way, right? So, and then also thinking about the lighting as well. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot, right? Like, you can kind of cheat your way through like a lot of it and like cut corners wherever you want to. If you have like a top-down shot, you don't have to make an entire environment. You can just have like a little bit, like, you could have almost like a wooden table with like a piece of cloth over it, and you just really quickly hand paint it. Like, you don't even have to care about like the game art aspect, right? Like, just make a quick piece of cloth, unwrap it, hand paint it, done, cool. Now do like the top of the table, which is just like, I don't know, like a quick wooden plank or something like that, right? And then, yeah, it's already gonna make it like so much better, right? And that's gonna give you like a base. If you wanted to then even go further, you could add, I don't know, bits of storytelling, like a couple of coins. Maybe he's a trader and this is like a gun, a weapon that he's trading off or something like that, right? Like, I wanna see more of that instead of just like, oh, here's a hammer. Right? Like, tell me your story. Like, say something with this hammer. Because that's where it's at, man. That's where it's at. Cool. So, let's have a look at this gun. An electric gun. Yeah, okay. Interesting. We're gonna point out some quick things. I think everyone can see where this is going. I think we can really tell the geometry here. Right, so this is very apparent, like the amount of sides that this cylinder has. I think a good way of looking at this is you need to look at the geometric density that you're going for. So let's say if you add 6 sides, or like, let's say 8 sides here, because that works, right? That still holds up from a distance. Like, I can look at it and I can barely see the edges. So that means that you kind of have to extrapolate it for this size as well. So we're probably going to add like 2 edges in the middle here, right? And then make it like a nice and rounded, smooth shape, and then just apply that to like all the shapes, right? Like this shape here, this shape here, basically wherever you can really tell, like, oh, this is like a very blocky silhouette. You kind of have to massage it a little bit, especially in contrast to some of the really dense cabling that you have going on here, right? you added so much geo to make those little cables like very, very smooth that the comparison between the two is what makes me question the approach, right? Because I'll give you an example. If you wanted to make this like a low poly gun, and yeah, if you wanted to make this like a low poly gun and it's like very blocky and choppy and all that kind of stuff, right? You can do that. But then you need to do that on all the objects, right? And then this cable is probably going to be like very blocky and choppy too. And then it would be fine, because then the whole thing is consistent with the thing that is telling, right? Like, it's all the shapes and all the forms are telling me that this is like a low poly gun, and everything is kind of like edgy and kind of has like a lot of character to it, right? Because right now, because it's in between those spaces, I don't know what you're trying to say. So yeah. Presentation, again, storytelling can definitely be improved. Storytelling. The geometry can definitely be improved as well. And yeah, presentation. I'm gonna not dive into like too many details, right? Because this is more focused on the actual portfolio presentation. So I'm gonna keep it to like the big picture here. Yeah, storytelling. The geometry can definitely be increased, and then the presentation of it can definitely be improved on this one. And again, give me some breakdowns, right? Like the whole breakdown thing that we talked about with the previous artwork as well. We're gonna speed things up a little bit. Oh, shit! We got wireframes. It's awesome. Oh, what? This is great. Look at this. We got like nice wireframes. Look at that. That's beautiful. You got UVs, you got textures. Yeah, this is a sort of presentation. Like all the components are here, right? I love this. Do the VFX as well? That's awesome. Let me have a look here, right? Twinblade is the only one I tried to get some VFX on it in Unity. Oh, that's amazing though. That's a great job on that. Yeah, but this is way better than the previous posts that I've seen, right? Like we've got like all the game art stuff is in here. There's there's some improvements that can be made, right? Like ideally what you could do here is maybe you know about this or not. Let's see. How are we going to do this? Yeah, so let me do like a quick example here. Right? So I'm basically going to draw like all the stuff that you have. Okay, so you have that kind of shell, you have this kind of shell, and you have like a longer shell here with some stuff over here. And then you've got these two big sections of your blade. Right? Which I think it could be nice if you could fit both of them. Like maybe you move one about. If you could fit both of them like in a very vertical way and reduce like all this area that you're basically throwing out, and then just cut this UV or like your texture in two. So this could be like a 512 by 1024. Right? You can do that. Like you could have like non-square textures. It's a little bit of a technical mindfuck in the beginning, but you can do that, right? And this is especially a great trick if you have long sections. Let's say if you have to make like longer pipes, you can use this same kind of technique as well, where you use a longer texture instead of like a square one. So that would be my recommendation for the swords here. Yeah, honestly, like, great job. Very clean. Ever thought about vertical textures? Oh, no worries. It's an often forgotten technique. I honestly don't use it regularly on my end either. But yeah, that could be like a very useful technique. I think honestly, you're kind of underselling the whole thing here. I mean, when was this? Like 10 months ago. Okay. Because the whole presentation, like, again, I keep hammering on the damn presentation, right? I know, I'm like a broken record. But, like, just leveling up the presentation on this and giving it, like, a more exciting background and, like, maybe... do they have a good example? Not really. But, like, maybe the backgrounds could, like, represent the areas that the sword could be found in or something like that, right? Could be, like, a very interesting way to, like... embed that in to the presentation. Yeah, great stuff though. I think honestly, there's some more stuff that I want to say. It's mainly about the texturing, but I think if you look at your latest work now, you've learned so much that if you were to redo these items, it would look like way better. So it would be a waste of my time to just talk about all the improvements, because I can see that you've already applied them in your last work. Let's have a look at this quick little sculpt. Yeah, nothing too fancy. It is nice. It's a nice sculpt. It also is like a good indication of like what your interests are, you know? Like, not everyone's gonna take like a WoW coin and then make it like a sculpt in a portfolio, right? So I like that. It's like a personal project and also like a personal indication of who you are. Let's have a look at an environment, shall we? Blender, let's go. Are these shots the same? No, one is with like slight depth of field. They're weird. Oh, is this... Oh no, is that the concept? Wait. Yeah, interesting. I mean, okay, let's see what's actually here, right? This is a difficult one because I don't like the two bottom screenshots here, because again they're not represented well, right? I feel like whenever you take a snapshot from Blender, or you just take like a screen cap or something like that, to me feels very lazy. Like this one especially, right? And it's also not really doing anything to elevate my understanding of how the scene is built, really, right? I think it would be more interesting to have a collage. Like let's say you have the full scene, right? Let's take this example. This is your full scene preview. But then underneath it you also have, so what? This is like let me make a quick sketch here, right? So you got the full scene, and then under it, you have like the different assets that you use to compile the scene, just separated out so that people can see like, oh, they did this on this piece or whatever, right? You could have like the different chunks that you build in your scene as like separate little things. And then we can see like the modules, right? And then the full scene is broken down by the modules, and that could be an interesting way of showcasing it. But just keep them like nicely rendered, like you're doing here. Obviously, like try to render it like a little bit better, because this still has just like the basic plane underneath it, but this is already like miles ahead of the standard Blender render that's underneath here. But that could be like an interesting way to show it, right? Where you have the main render, and then you do like a full scene breakdown, and then underneath it you do like all the modules separately. Could be an interesting way of showing it. Just gonna quickly have a look here. Unity, let's go. That's cool. Got some cool little things going on. Yeah, I think again, like you can get some really quick wins with the presentation on this if you just reuse the sand, right? Like make a separate scene, have the sand there, and then almost present them like they're in the environment, but they're like separated out, and then maybe show the wireframe and all that kind of stuff on top of it too. Could be like a very interesting way of showing it. Quick peek on this one as well. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, I think pretty soon it's gonna be decision time. Like, what are you gonna cut out of your portfolio and what not, right? Because I think some of these things are kind of showing their age, and you have to be really, really specific about like whether you're gonna keep it on your portfolio or you're gonna move it off of your portfolio. I would honestly... Where would I draw the line? I mean, there's a lot that you can salvage, right? I don't want to keep cutting, because there's a lot of quick wins in this portfolio specifically, where if you just spice up the presentation a little bit, you can elevate a lot of this to the next level. Because I actually kind of like some of the content in here is just not represented well. Maybe this one would be on the cutting floor for me. Maybe. Right, that's the first one. I think this is actually like a cool project because it kind of ties into you as a person, so I kind of like that. Maybe this one can be on the cutting floor. Oh wait, let me... Like the WoW coin was a keeper to me. And I'll say... I'll put like an O. No, what do you think about that? So we have like an O for like can be improved, right? And then be kept. I'll probably remove this one. Do an O here. Keep this one. And then get rid of this one as well. Right, so that's the way that it looks to me. If you want to put in the work, right? Yeah. But I think honestly, realistically, what's going to happen, and this is also, I think, what realistically is going to happen, what I was going, right, is that you're going to keep on making new stuff, and then the old stuff is going to be pushed out of your portfolio. iMac 3D, I get rid of that gun. It seems to be, it needs way more geo on the bevel shapes. Yeah, I think so, but that's what I mean with like quick wins, right? Because when I look at those shapes, like to me, that's literally just a couple of edge loops and then fixing the curve with like edit edge flow, and then you're done, right? That's the thing to me. Like you could potentially salvage that, and obviously you need to elevate the presentation to the next level as well, which is probably going to take most of the time there. But I think what realistically is going to happen is keep on working and just push all the stuff that is kind of like a question mark or like was going to get scrapped in this overview that I did, and just push that off your portfolio. A thing to keep in mind is your portfolio is only as good as your worst work, right? That's the way that you need to look at it. Like people will definitely look at your best work, but if your worst work is like really bad, I'm not saying it is in this case, right? But if it is really bad, like that's also like people have the good and the bad benchmark, right? So what you need to do is you have the good one here, you need to push the bad one up as close to the good one as you can. And in this case, like cutting stuff would be the easiest way to do it. Yes. Thank you, Eloy, for sharing your portfolio as well. Like, I know that some of it might not be like pleasant to hear, and I apologize, but it's genuinely from the goodness of my heart that I do this, and I try to be like as open and as transparent about it as well, right? So if anything doesn't make sense, or if you want to ask more questions, again, feel free to reach out to me on ArtStation, and I'll see if we can help each other out more. Cool. Let's have a look at some questions here, because I think I skipped over a couple ones. The Real Shades. When creating environments, should you create all the individual pieces for the environment, or can you use pre-made assets from Quixel or Unreal Engine Marketplace to show in your portfolio? Yes, you can. The quick way there is to only use it on stuff that is not important to the scene. So I'll give an example, right? So you're making a shrine in a forest. Right? So you're sculpting the shrine, and the shrine has like all these cool intricate details around it, but it's also surrounded by like a small forest. Just use Megascans for that forest, you know? Like you don't need to make like all the trees yourself. You can just use Quixel stuff for that. So I would say like the stuff that you want to focus on, that's the stuff that you need to make yourself. That's probably the best way that I can explain it. So like your focal point is really what we're talking about, right? Right, so yeah, your focal point is what you should make yourself, and yeah, the rest of it you can just reuse, right? Oh, Bulbob, that's a good question. But if you're into foliage art, you want to make the trees and stuff yourself, no? Yes, just flip it around, right? Flip it around. Make a fucking kick-ass looking tree. Make a freaking kick-ass looking tree and then have like ruins around it or something like that, right? And the ruins could be from Megascans or whatever you find them, and the tree is like you made it yourself. Right, you can apply this to anything that you can come up with. It's just gonna change the focal point, right? So you're kind of setting up like a different story, right? Like, that's always an exercise that I do, right? Like I went to like the shrine in the middle of the forest. Like I'm already imagining like a story that I can build there. But if you tell me, oh, the focal point is a tree now, I'm just flipping it, right? And that's why I went to like ruins, because I'm imagining this post-apocalyptic desolated planet with like the one tree that made it through like all of it, right? And that can be like a very powerful story too. And it allows you to focus on the foliage rather than the ruins surrounding it. But I mean, with foliage, you can... It doesn't always need to be like a full scene either, right? I want to throw that out there. Like, it doesn't need to be like a full scene. A tree can also be like just a diorama, right? If you... There's some really great... you think about it. There's some great examples from Shadow of War, I think? Let me quickly look it up. Shadow of War. I think they had some great foliage, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Assassin's Creed Valhalla had like amazing foliage too, so that's another great example. Oh yeah, here. This is it. I'll add this to the chat. If you're interested in foliage, it doesn't need to be like a full environment, right? Like, you could make something like this. That looks kick-ass, and yeah. Like, it doesn't need to be the full thing. Obviously, you can make it look pretty nice if you have like a nice bit of ground texturing going on, right? But you can, yeah, definitely make it look nice. But that's a very good question, though. That definitely comes up a lot. I'll add one more, right? It's kind of what I was riffing on before, but for an environment artist, you don't necessarily have to make entire environments, because the way that you need to look at it, right? The way that I always like try to translate it is, worlds are not built by one person, right? If you look at like all the bigger worlds out there, like the Assassin's Creeds or the Divisions or whatever, it's not built by one person, right? So the way that they make the scale and like the scope of an environment is just by adding more people onto it, right? So it's not your sole responsibility to make like a whole like world by yourself, right? Because that's not a realistic like it's not a realistic like studio environment that you're setting yourself up for. Like, if you're comfortable with like a lot of the aspects of environment art creation and you want to do that, like me, right? Like, I love making full environments. Then I would say go for it. But you have to be realistic with your current representation, like your current idea of your mindset versus your actual skill level, which is very important and very tricky to figure out. Because in the beginning, we have this overestimation or like almost like over enthusiasm of like, oh, I want to make cool shit. And then you just make it like way too big and usually ends up on the graveyard. Hi Mac. Hey Tim, when's the next review? So that will be in a month. I do this on a monthly basis. I submit through Discord. I made that wrench for Whip Wednesday and would love your feedback on it. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so the next review will be in a month. I do this on a monthly basis. And then next Whip Wednesday, I'll be here. I understand. The thing is, I'm worried I'm not producing good enough work, even though I'm spending 14 plus hours every day on improving, and not knowing what will get me hired after uni is eating me. Yeah. But that's an interesting one, right? Because the amount of time that you spend there doesn't necessarily mean that it's quality time and focus time. Right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, you could be spending like a whole bunch of time on it, but that doesn't mean that it's good focus time, right? I just realized that that's not a question, so I'm just like throwing my opinion at you, Tobias. I'm sorry. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, and I understand, like, yeah, the very real thing about not getting hired after uni. That's like a lot of pressure, right? I will say, to add on to that, is it's not only the work that you produce that is gonna get you hired in the industry, right? It's also timing, it's also luck, it's also like, where are they in their development cycle? It's also like, have you applied? You know, because a lot of people make good work, but they're still jobless because they haven't even applied, or when they did, like, they just do it to one or two companies that are like never looking for juniors, you know? So there's a whole lot more to it than just your art. Hey, Costas! But you also do with Wednesday, we can submit to as well. Yes, iMac. So I'll show it off. So on the Discord channel, we have our little work in progress section here, and there's a Whip Wednesday review tag. And if you just tag your entry as that, I will review it every Whip Wednesday, whenever you want. So the option is definitely there. Let's continue with some of the questions here. I think there's some good ones in there. Dude, I'm 7 years after graduating, 3 artists last year and no go. Oh, iMac, you want to know a secret? I have done 5 artists in my career, and I failed them all. Even multiple ones for Ubisoft, which I was employed at. Well, I did the artist before I joined Ubisoft, right? But I failed multiple artists for Ubisoft and then joined Ubisoft. Like just another studio. Lucien, thank you for this helpful information. Oh, that's awesome. Happy to help. Yeah, oh my god, artists, don't even get me started. It's hard to get hired when 200 people plus are applying for the same position as you. Yeah. You just gotta keep trying, right? Because keep throwing your portfolio out there. Because you never know when a company just might really vibe with the work that you're doing and you might be the perfect fit. You just never know. And I know it can be demotivating, right? Just keep on trucking, you know? Like, rejections are not an indication that your art is not good. Because you don't know what they are working with, right? You don't know behind the scenes, you don't know what they have to deal with. And it might be like a whole bunch of different set of variables that have nothing to do with your art. Put my recent project in a portfolio review channel for the next session, but my portfolio as a whole is a mess. I've been going for 4 years, but switched to environment art. Oh, that's no worries, second favorite. We'll have a look at it together next time. Let me actually switch over to like the full screen thing, because we're just chatting anyway. Is this it? Hey, there we go. It's Gav! Hi, Gav! Zaim, hey, I'm a student still learning 3D. I'm going to study MA in game art for the University of Hertfordshire. Oh my god. I can't pronounce these long names. It's the same as Massachusetts. Like, I always fuck it up. I can't help myself. If you could give some tips for my portfolio, it would mean a lot to me. I think the best thing that you can do is just submit it for the next portfolio review. This is going to happen next month. Oh, but you're going to study. I usually, well, I'll leave it up to you. I'll send the link where you can submit your portfolio review, but yeah, usually my portfolio reviews cater more towards people that are trying to get into the industry, not into a university. If that makes sense. Dots is saying about the previous topic, the more you make yourself, the better. Not necessarily. Because if you want to do, let's say if you want to make a prop, like if you want to become a prop artist, right? Let's make it super simple. And you make an environment around it, and you spend like a ton of time learning the foliage workflow and a ton of time like learning all the environment workflows and whatever. It might help you in the long run, right? Because I think those are valuable skills. However, all of that stuff is just a distraction from what you really want to do. So you might as well just use asset packets for it, right? Especially if you're trying to get into the industry. I think the whole equation changes a little bit once you're into the industry and you have more free time, and you can decide like, hey, look, I have my core skill set, which is prop art, but now I also want to tack on foliage or whatever, right? I think that's valuable. Yeah. What would you consider as lazy when you see someone's portfolio? My God, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, it's kind of, we talked about it a lot of times before, right? It's just a presentation where the prop itself actually looks really nice, but then people tend to put it on like a black background, and it's like, yeah, that's just laziness, right? Like, like that's probably like the one example that I can think from today. I'm trying to think about other examples. What do you consider lazy? Kind of a tough one, you know, because let's be real, anyone that makes like prop art or environment art, like they don't do it because they're lazy, right? I think even the example that I brought up before is technically not lazy, right? It's just they got to this point where they're like, oh my God, I'm so done with this. Like I just wanna get it over with. And then they need to still do the presentation of it, and they kind of rush through it, right? It's not necessarily lazy. Yeah, it's an interesting question. But I think from the people that I'm surrounded with, right? Like the students, I mean, not my peers in the industry, right? Like, the bar is really high, right? I think when I really look at people that are lazy, it will be something so foundationally like, yeah, wrong with their art, where you can see that, hey, they just got into 3D, right? And they're trying to make like super cool art, but they don't have the patience for it, so they just make like a bunch of shapes and then just slap like a turbo smooth on it to kind of smoothen out all the shapes, and then it kind of looks okay, but it also doesn't. Like, those kind of situations I would probably classify as lazy, right? Because they're trying to get to like the end result in like a very quick, like in a very quick manner, you know? That's probably like, if I have to think about like actual portfolios that I've seen of like, or like work that I've seen, it's probably gonna be people inside of that realm, you know? Where either they don't have the patience for it, well, the patience for it yet, or yeah, I don't know. I don't even know an or. Like, I think they don't have the patience for it yet. It's a good question though. Yeah. trying to think. This is a good. I'm gonna write that down and think about that more. Because it is a good question. Because there must be like a bunch of stuff that I've seen. I just can't remember it, right? Like when people are trying to make like really, yeah, like shortcuts, right? Like the real shade is saying like when texturing assets, like using smart materials. That's what I currently like thought of is like, yeah, that's kind of lazy, right? But it's not necessarily lazy. It could also be intertwined with like not knowing how to properly texture something. So it might be just inexperience too. I'll think about it. Good question. Let's see. Oh, Alexander says artists. He's just afraid of them. Truly appreciate your opinions and what you're saying. I learned a lot today. Thank you. Much love. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm 30 in 9 days, man. Oh shit, I'm 30. I'm 32. I'm 32. As in me too, not like 32, you know? If you have any time, do you mind looking at the project I posted in the portfolio section? Not really. I think I'm gonna head off in a little bit, but we're gonna keep it for next time. Oh, and then you just answered. Okay, never mind. Even if your art is not super top notch, showing willingness and determination will get you points toward the position. Yeah. I'll let you in on like another secret. I mean, it's not a secret for Costas probably, but for people that don't have experience in the industry, we've not hired people that had better portfolios than all the competition. Just because they weren't a good team fit. Right? Like, that's the thing. Like, there's people out there that I would love to work with just by looking at their work, right? But then you get to meet them and you're like, I kind of changed my mind now. Ocean is asking, do you know if AAA studios buy assets from the stores? And Costa is saying, in a lot of vacation studios will buy assets. Yes. I've never seen this myself, right? It doesn't matter that it doesn't happen. But I mean, I work for Ubisoft, right? They have their own internal studios that make the assets. So we would actually work with like other studios in like different sections of the world that would then make assets for the stuff that we were creating. So it's kind of like a whole different level, right? But I do know that a lot of AAA studios buy assets. Yeah, for sure. iMac is saying I just submitted my portfolio where it said community members skip the line. Is that through a Patreon subscription? Yes, yeah, that would be through our Patreon. Yep. So you can just go to beyondextend.com, which I'll link here, and then join our Patreon, and then there's a portfolio review channel in there where you can post your portfolios. Where's my chat? My chat gone. Do-do-do-do. What was I looking? Oh, it was this chat? Yeah, let's have a look. Saeem, does the timing of ArtStation posts matter? Like, is there a big gap between posts? Is this something interesting to take into consideration? Oh god. I know why this is a question, right? Because there's a lot of people. I mean, this is a social media thing. Right? Let's be honest about it. Like, people try to time their posts to get the maximum amount of effect or like the maximum amount of traction when they do post it, right? But I feel like the other thing that's actually more important is to not get carried away with that stuff, especially when it comes to your portfolio, because you don't want to go into a mindset of like, oh, now I need to post. Oh, rush it out, you know? It's a very bad mindset to have, and it would also put this like unnecessary pressure on you. So I'm saying this from like an opinion or like a perspective that I just put my stuff out there, right? And if it's good enough, people will see it. And if it's not, then less people will see it. And that's the way that it should work, right? Because the way that this also works in the background, and I mean, we're all here, right? Everyone knows this. When something really good pops up, you'll probably share it, right, with your friends, and you're like, oh my god, look at this. This is awesome. Or in a lot of cases, like, how the hell did they do that? I'm so jealous now. Ugh, time to make more art. Let's go. I mean, that's what it was for me, at least. But yeah, that's like your first I misunderstood. But hey, that's an interesting topic by itself, right? Like just the social media aspect coming into like when to post on your ArtStation. But Zaim actually meant like if there's a big gap between posts, is that something industry is taking into consideration? Not really. Because it is really tricky to take that into account. Because let's say over the last year you post consistently. So every month you're putting out like a new piece of art, right? So you have 12 posts, but then you decide to remove the ones from like, I don't know, a couple months ago, right? So there's that gap all of a sudden. There's no way for people, like for myself to look, like as I'm looking at your portfolio, I'm looking at that gap, but I don't know why that is, right? So it goes into like assumptions, and that's not something that the industry should rely on. So I think it would be bad if they take that into account. So I don't think I do. I think most people are smart enough to realize that all sort of circumstances can happen. So I don't think the industry at large does it. But what matters is the quality of the work, like Costas is saying. 100%. Yeah, I think, because I gotta be honest, right? When I was looking at portfolios, I looked at those gaps, but they never meant anything significant to me. Like, to me, sometimes I would ask, right? Like, oh, you have like this year gap here. Like, what happened? And they would say like, oh yeah, I did some stuff in the meantime and it was just like trial and error and I couldn't really figure it out and that's it. You know? Or it might also be like, oh, that's kind of personal. It's like, yeah, fair enough. Oh, dots. You're saying, yeah, this is about the lazy thing again, right? Like when their 4-year-old post is the same quality as the one posted a month ago. That's an interesting one, right? Because I don't think that's laziness. I think that's either an inability to reflect on your own work in an objective manner, or being stuck in your learning curve. I mean, 4 years is a long gap, right? Like 4 years is really long. But I've seen people that just plateaued, you know, because they kind of were figuring stuff out, and it's like, people kind of get lost, you know. Like it's yeah, that's why I also call it like the artistic journey, right? And a lot of other people do. Because sometimes you deviate from the path and you kind of get lost in the woods, and then it's like, oh, here's the path again, you know, but it's, you know. Andrea is saying, once I have some finances, I would love to have you and the community's feedback on some of my work. Oh yeah, we would love to have you too, Andrea. Love to put in some work. Jealousy is a good driving factor. I saw the vertex blending on one of the Last of Us art drops, and it's all I can think about. Yeah, I think Yeah, I think jealousy in that case comes from like the possibility of seeing something done better than you're currently doing, right? It's just like, dang, I wanna be as good as that. And I mean, yeah, that's inspiring me too, like every day, right? Like I like to be surrounded with people that are better than me in what they do. And sometimes when they're just working their magic, you know, they're working as they're always working, and you're just looking at their screen and you're like, dang, they know what they're doing, you know? And it kind of, I don't know, it makes me, I mean, it's a little bit different now because I'm working from home constantly, but in the office, like, it would always fill me with like pride, you know? It's like, dang, I'm working with these people. This is freaking amazing. And then also, you can just, in most cases, you can just walk up to them and just ask, like, hey, how did you do that? And they're like really open and friendly about it. So amazing. So amazing. All right, we're gonna be rounding off here. Let's read a couple more lines from Costas here as well. Once you are in the industry, your personal work will take a hit for sure. However, if you're trying to get into the industry, gaps don't matter. Yep. Yep. Smart and precise work with enough breakdowns and showcasing the way you work will say a lot more than anything else. Still have only my MA work, but out on the blog and whip. People will understand the circumstance. Yeah, 100%, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's only normal for your personal work to suffer when you're suddenly working 8 hours a day, right? Yeah, 100%. And I think I was coming at it from the perspective that I, how should I say it? Like, the thing that interested me in the gaps in people's posting on their portfolios was more from like, hey, I want to get to know you better as like a person that I would potentially work with in the future. Right? It didn't really necessarily have to do with the portfolio itself necessarily. Um, yeah, I hope that makes sense. And sometimes, yeah, it's tricky. Thank you for the answer. Great stream, by the way. We'll tune in more often. Oh, that's awesome, Zaim. Good to see you here. All right, people. I think that's a great end to the stream. I want to thank everyone for putting the portfolios out there. I wasn't expecting to do this many this time, but I think this is a good cadence. So I appreciate you all being here. Go check out beyondextend.com. You don't have to become a community member. We have like a bunch of cool shit like on our YouTube channel. And we have like a bunch of cool like learning opportunities on our website as well. So make sure to check that all out. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.